So I have a pretty good system for growing peppers now. I start off in one of these low tunnels in May. Peppers grow in this bed until sometime in October, and then in October I'll perhaps plant winter lettuces and probably finish harvesting those about December time, and then I'll plant spring spinach, which is what I'm taking out now, and then back to peppers. So it works quite nicely, means that I get to reuse these covers, and but the downside to using covers is watering, so I have a pretty good system now for minimising the amount of watering, and also minimising the number of slugs and snails for the follow-on crop, because obviously as soon as I take the peppers out I want to put the lettuces in, and I don't want to get those lettuces munched by slugs and snails. So I'm going to take you through my system refined over quite a few years now, and very happy with it. Much prefer it to growing in the polytunnel, partly because the polytunnel, the peppers don't need the height in the polytunnel. Certainly the varieties that I grow anyway don't need the height. They're perfectly happy in one of these low tunnels. And also just because of the heat, I can control the temperature in these low tunnels just by moving these chocks kind of up and down to get the opening wider or smaller. But also because the polytunnel is just a very expensive space. These low tunnels are very cheap and last a long time. So, just wanting to make best use of the space, use the polytunnel for the high value crops and use the low tunnels for the lower value crops like peppers, melons, courgettes, things like that. So when I'm clearing, I like to just twist the plants out, leaving the roots in, and they rot down nicely. One of the nice things, obviously, of having a crop in here, especially something like spinach, is that I've done a lot of watering over spring. So this ground, although it's not really saturated, it is at least slightly moist. So that reduces the watering burden that I've got to deal with. So I just like to make sure that the bed is really well weeded. Spinach helps with this because it does tend to smother any weeds. So that's kind of all I've managed to take out of here. But I don't really like weeding, so bed prep is kind of king for me. So once I've got all of the weeds out, then I've got to go on to fertilising. So I'll go on to that in a minute. So that's my start point. And just want to get it all nice and level now. I always think it's important to get a bed level so you don't get pockets that collect a lot of water and others that are really dry. And then I'll give it a really good water, at least 4 watering cans per bed. So that's nicely watered. So I'm just putting in a few handfuls of this 6x concentrated manure down, and this will help the follow-on crop as well, the lettuces later. So I'm going to put it over the whole bed, even though I'm not going to, I'm only going to plant the peppers in the middle. So I can spread that out a bit. Then I like a couple of buckets of my own homemade compost, and I particularly like it for things like the pepper beds, because my homemade compost, even though I hot compost everything, is always weedy. There's just too many weeds on this allotment site that blow into the compost. So because I'm going to mulch this, it doesn't really matter too much that there's a few weeds in here, and they'll probably germinate underneath the mulch. They won't have enough light, they'll die off, and then by the time I take the mulch off, because I use Mulch in October for the lettuce bed, there's not that many weeds that are going to germinate in October. And as I said, then the spinach kind of smothers them anyway in spring if any do germinate, and so then I'm back with a reasonably weed-free starting point. And it's a good way to use homemade compost under mulch. So there we go, that's the generic bed prep done. Now we're just going to get on with the pepper specific bits and pieces. So I start out with these halos. I love these halos. I use them for tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, courgettes, melons, pretty much anything I can really. I love them for so many reasons. The first reason is that they've got these little pegs at the bottom here. These go about an inch down into the soil, so they deliver the water under the surface layer. It stops it sort of running all over the place and directs it down into the root zone of the plants. You can see exactly how much water you've delivered to them as well, because you're watering into this outer ring here. Occasionally I'll water a little bit into here, sometimes just the feed when I'm feeding them into this ring. I don't fill this up, I'm only using this essentially as a kind of cowl to direct the water down into the root zone. But it has a few other benefits. I mean, it's sort of like a secondary slug protection sort of barrier. The slugs kind of creep up to here, and then obviously they've got to climb up here and then round this lip. That's an extra hassle. It just reduces the problem with slugs. But I've got Mulch as well, which I'll come on to, which helps even more with that. It just neatens everything up. It holds the straw mulch back as well, so it's well away from the plants. And just super neat. So I'm going to put 6 plants in per square metre, and every time I do this I think, oh, this looks a bit tight, but it works every year. And so what I'm doing now is I'm just kind of spacing these out. I do everything by eye, and it might seem like it's a bit of a kind of faffle, this very careful bed prep, but once it's done, good bed prep, then you're in a kind of situation where all I'm doing is spending maybe 5 minutes a week, probably not even that, watering, and that's it, apart from harvesting. There's no weeding to do. There's very little watering to do. The watering's quick and efficient, and I love it. So I've got a lot of other things to be doing in summer other than gardening. So for me, this is the way I like to do it, and it just allows me to get my gardening hours down to a kind of manageable 1 day a week or something like that. And I think that's the spacing that I'm going for, and I'm faffing around with that so that I can find the centres, and that's where I'm going to sink my plant pots. So I always tap these out like this, just to make sure these little holes aren't bunged up. And some people actually drill the holes out more, or some people even cut the little pegs off, because they think the water doesn't drain quickly enough. But I much prefer the water to drain nice and slowly. I don't want to flood the plants with water. I'd rather it just sort of seep into the ground over an hour or so. And the plants don't need more than a full halo's worth of water in a week, so there's no need really to accelerate the rate at which the water seeps into the ground. If it takes 2 days, it's fine. Right, so now when I take these out, I know exactly where my planting positions are. and I'm just going to sink 11 centimetre pots into the ground, because I'm not doing the planting today, but I want the holes all ready to go. So there we go, I'm back where I started. All the pots are sunk into the ground now, and this is how we do the watering, so it's just really quick and easy. So there we go, that's the bed pep all done. I've put the straulch down, and you can see it's a quick and easy process. This is straulch that I saved from last year, maybe even the year before. It's certainly going to last at least another year, so work on 3 years basically before you just compost it. It's really easy to remove. You just basically just like scrape it up. It's super simple. So advantages: less watering, less weeding, less slugs and snails. Aesthetically it looks quite nice, and really quick clean up for the next crop, and you're kind of ready to go. You do need to do a little bit of watering, but I mean this has retained quite a lot of water, and you know, I think last year, the last time I watered this part of the bed, you know, not this part, was in May, and when I took it up in October, it was still slightly moist. not very moist, but still slightly moist underneath, and sort of 4 inches down it was nice and moist. So yeah, it's a really nice technique, I think, and it certainly made growing a sort of moderately low value crop like peppers really easy and really worthwhile, because the input is basically a couple of hours at the start of the process. I do 36 plants, so all told it's probably a day of bed prep and planting, and then maybe half a day after that until harvest time. Well, I got diverted onto watering, but I'm back doing this bed. I've got the kale out now and the cabbages out now, and it's all prepped and ready to go. So I'm just going to do exactly the same as I did before, and I've got one more bed to go, and then I'll have enough for 36 plants. Right, so that's the second bed all done, and what I've then done is I've just sprinkled about a 1 centimetre layer of fresh straulch over the top, and about half a bag has done this bed and the other bed, so I'm able to do 8 beds basically with 2 bags. That's what I bought. My logic is that you don't really need a very significant layer in order to achieve the slug and snail prevention sort of features, because that's based on the slugs coming into contact with the straulch. The straulch is kind of dry and scratchy, and even the old straulch is dry and scratchy, but also they don't like the iron that's infused into the straw, and obviously the fresh straw probably has more of that iron infused into it, but then they associate the smell of the straulch with the scratchy iron sort of sensation, and so the smell obviously is achieved with a relatively small application of it, and you can really smell it. So yeah, I think it definitely makes it much more cost effective to do it like this, with reusing it and just sort of refreshing the top layer. So I shall be trying that for a few years, and we'll see how it gets on. So just one other point to note is that the suppliers say that you shouldn't use straulch in undercover beds, so polytunnels, low tunnels, coal frames and things like that. It does give off fumes. I don't know what the fumes are, but they say in outdoor beds obviously it's fine because the fumes just blow away. I think there's some truth to that statement. I've never seen a problem with peppers They don't show any signs of scorching or anything like that. They grow quite happily. But something like lettuce or beetroot, you do get some scorching on the leaves of new plants. However, if you put it down and then leave it for, you know, a week or 2 weeks or something like that, it off gases, then there's no problem. You can plant straight into it, and yeah, no problem at all with the actual straw coming into contact with those new leaves. They do grow through it, so even though they get scorched, you know, those leaves might die off, but the heart leaves are fine and it keeps on growing fine. So it's not a huge issue. The other point obviously is, in addition to putting it down a few weeks before you plant anything into it, the second point is always have some ventilation, you know, so you know, there's nothing that you're planting in here that won't benefit from ventilation. Well, if all goes to plan, planting should be a nice quick process. Let's pop these out and then take the pots out and then just drop them in. And I'm planting I think four different varieties: Akron, Bright Star, Lunchbox, Long Yellow Ringo, and maybe I'll put a few New Star in. And yeah, I much prefer planting in the evening, partly just because it's nicer, you know, it's cooler and everything, but also just I think it's better for the plants. You know, they get to enjoy a sort of coolish start to life. That was a bit tricky to get out. So yeah, quick and easy. I'll just settle those in. A bit tight in the pots actually. A bit of a struggle to get out. And then I can just put the halos back on the outside. Just like that. These pop out. All done. And then the last job of the night, I just pop these canes in and just putting the eye savers on them. So if you're interested in the way that I grow peppers, I've got a nice guide in my ebook, which I'll put a link to down in the description below. And from now on, really, it just comes down to feeding, and I don't feed for a while, not until the fruits are established and growing well. And yeah, keep them ventilated. Probably going to close the bed up tonight, just and for the next few days, but then I'll sort of start them off just sort of like this, just 1 or 2 inches of ventilation at night, and gradually sort of acclimatise them so that they can get sort of this amount at night as well, and plenty of warmth during the day. And the main reason that I leave them vented like this is because I'm not here every day, so I can't be opening and closing the beds every night and every morning.